How's it going?
Oh, this is amazing. I mean, this is my first convention where I'm a guest like this, although I was at Awesome Con. Do anyone know Awesome Con in D.C.?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. You know, it was like thousands of people all dressed very interestingly. So I did a CRISPR panel for that. But besides that, this is absolutely the first time that I've done anything X-Files like. And it's been amazing. I'm overjoyed. I'm overjoyed by how many people are so interested in the science. I really am. So thank you for, I would like to thank you for being such awesome fans and for really appreciating the fact that this show has some wonderful science in it and this wonderful character of Scully, and that this show really changed how we view science and scientists. And so, you know, we owe it all to the fact that there were such wonderful fans for the show that kept with it. And so congratulations to all of you. I mean, the scientific world really appreciates you.
You guys.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned Scully. Now, was she the character that initially drew you to the show?
What originally drew me to the show was I was a young assistant professor at University of Massachusetts. And as you know, professors have an awful lot of time on their hands. Not. Yeah, we're not all scrambling for papers and grants and teaching and all of that, right? So this was pre-internet, so, you know, I was perusing TV Guide to see whether there are any interesting looking new shows way back then. And I saw this X-Files, and I read the blurb for it. Woman scientist, FBI, paranormal, and then I saw the channel it was on, Fox. And this is in the days when Fox was only on a couple days of the week, so it wasn't, you know, on every single day. It was a minor channel, and they were better known for, what, 21 Jump Street, you know, bubblegum chewing narcs in high schools, Johnny Depp's big, you know, his, what introduced us all to him. But they were not known for serious drama, so I wasn't expecting anything. But I turned it on because I wanted to see just how horribly they were presenting the scientists. Because up until the X-Files, there were no sympathetic portrayals of scientists. Scientists were portrayed as either, we had a choice here, evil, well, three choices, mad, which kind of goes along with evil, or, you know, totally geeky, totally, you know, inhuman, the ends justify the means, you know, just not people you would want to be associated with. So that's what I was fully expecting. And then I turn on the show, and the first thing is Mark Snow's incredible music. So I'm thinking, ooh, this is, and then the incredible visuals, I'm thinking, this is Fox? And then they show Gillian Anderson as Dana Scully, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is so realistic. You know, she's the scientist. She's gorgeous. She's smart. She's human. She's, I mean, emotional. It was really, it was the first time. You have to understand how unusual this was to see this character. So of course, I didn't turn it off after 5 minutes, as I was fully expecting to do. And I kept watching it, and I watched to the end, and I loved the show. And at the end credits, you know, it's the executive producer, the beginning credits, you know, it was Chris Carter. And it didn't even occur to me that it was the Chris Carter I knew. That it was Chris Carter who was married to my mother's best friend, Dory. Who we always referred to as Dory's Chris, by the way. And who I only knew as a really hunky surfer. Okay, that was the Chris, really hunky surfer. I mean, blonde. I mean, he was. Okay. Yes, I was married. And he was too. So that's, you know, so I kept watching the show. and I loved the show. And so I was a fan. I was one of the original X-File fans well before I had anything to do with the show. And if you want to, I can get into how I actually ended up getting into the
Please?
show.
That's what we're here for.
I will continue the story.
Please do.
So halfway through the first season, I get this phone call from my mother. And she goes, you know, how are you doing, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, you know, did you know that Dory's Chris has a new TV series called The X-Files? And I'm sure she was expecting me to say, the what? The what? You know, Chris is working for, you know, what? And instead I'm going like, oh my gosh, The X-Files, I love The X-Files. You know, I watch every episode. And she goes, oh, Chris is going to be really happy to hear about this because we were at a party together and he's bemoaning the fact that he needs help with the biology, the science on the show, and he doesn't know any scientists outside of his brother who was helping him with the physical science on the show. And my mother goes to him, you know, Chris, what about Anne? And he's like, oh my gosh, Anne, of course. Can you call her and ask her if she wouldn't mind if I called and asked her some questions? And so then, here was my mother calling me, and I was going, oh gosh, you know, please tell Chris, call me. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, they're going to use the right microscopes. I'm going to make sure they use the right microscopes. You know, I'm going to be able to make the science more accurate. I was really excited because nobody was taking any care to make science accurate in shows either. So the scientists were portrayed in a terrible way, and the science was being portrayed in a terrible way. And here was someone who actually wanted to make the science more real. So Chris literally called me an hour after that phone call, and he wanted to talk to me about the last episode of the first season. So I'm telling him I loved the show. He was real happy to hear that, you know, me and the 3 other people watching were really excited about the show. And so the first thing that he said to me, because I remember this conversation, you know, like it was yesterday, because it was really exciting. He said to me, this is the episode where I want people to know that the aliens are real. And if you watch without knowing, because remember, back then it wasn't like we were streaming it and, you know, we could watch it, you could binge it in, you know, in a day. But back then we had no idea what was coming. So it wasn't clear, are the aliens real, are they not real? You were confused. You didn't know where the show was going. So he wanted people to understand after this episode that the aliens were real. So I said, yeah, okay, good, good. So he said to me, he said, okay, so here's the thing. If you have a strange microorganism, if someone hands you a strange microorganism, what would you do with it? And so the first thing I said, well, the first thing you do with it is you would try to grow more of it. You wouldn't want to waste your sample. And I told him, you know, a strange microorganism, you know, it might take 10 years or so. And he thought that might be boring. I don't know. There's some microorganisms that we still can't, you know, culture. They're terrible. It's horrible, you know, horrible problem for science. But we figured, okay, well, let's have these things being cultured. So he said, okay, well, how about if we skip that part? So I said, fine. So I said, well, you know, I would grow up more of them in an Erlenmeyer flask. And he goes, Erlenmeyer flask? Can you spell that for me? And, you know, there are no spell checks back then. You know, that's E-H-R. You know, so I'm spelling Erlenmeyer flask. And, of course, that ended up being the name of the episode, the Erlenmeyer flask. So then he says, okay, well, what would you do next? And I said, well, I would look at them under a microscope. So I said, now, the kind of microscope that you would use is a scanning electron microscope. Do you want me to spell that? And he was like, so scanning electron microscope. He goes, okay. And I said, no, this is the kind of microscope you don't actually look into. You have a video monitor for it. So I said, you know, what are you going to show on the video monitor? I said, don't show bacteria, you know, because, I mean, I work on viruses. Viruses are really, really cool. Bacteria, boring. You know, they're like smooth and they're, you know, round or oblong. I mean, they're boring. So I said to him, why don't you, instead of bacteria, I said, why don't you use pollen. I work on plant viruses, by the way. So I said, what about pollen? I said, pollen would make a great alien bacteria because it's got lots of nooks and crannies and it looks really cool. So he actually found an advertisement for antihistamine in a magazine, and they had a picture of pollen from a scanning electron microscope, and that's what he ended up using. So it was actually in color. It shouldn't have been in color, but that's okay. It's television. So then we got past that. So he said, well, what would you do next? So I said, well, the next thing I would do is maybe do a freeze fracture of it, maybe crack it open and look inside and see what the membranes look like or see what it looks like inside. So that was next. And he said, okay, but what could you do that would instantly scream out to you, this is alien? It's like, okay. You don't get asked this question. You may not know it, but you don't get asked this question a lot, okay? How would you know that the microorganism you're studying is not alien? Okay, so it's like, well, because it's not usually your first go-to. If you have something strange, it's not, this is probably alien. It's usually something else. So I said, why don't we, so I had to try to think. And, Chris wants the answer like this. I'm sure he's going like this, right? So I'm thinking, okay, what is it that all life on this planet shares? What do we all share? And there's a lot of things we all share. There's some metabolic pathways like glycolysis. There's proteins that all have the same 20 amino acids. And all of that sounded way too complicated. So then I thought, what about just DNA? It's 4 nucleotides, simple as can be. Let's give it an extra 2 nucleotides. Let's give it an extra base pair. So literally it was like, I came up with that on the spot, on the phone with him. And years later, you hear people analyzing these extra 2 nucleotides and how they came up with it and how that was really important for this or for this or for this. And no. It was just me on the phone trying to come up with something really fast to help my friend. So we gave it these 2, and he said, well, how would she know that it would have these 2 nucleotides extra? And I did a lot of sequencing of DNA, determining the order of nucleotides of DNA back then. And if you had a strange nucleotide, not an alien one, but just one that had an extra little piece on it, you would have a blank in what are called the autoradiograms that you see, the radioactive tracers that you see of this sequence that you're developing. And it would just be blank there. Instead of a line, you'd see a blank. So I said, well, if she saw blanks, and she would think there was something very unusual, that this was an extra nucleotide base pair. So then I'm thinking, and when I actually got the script, I'm trying to think, how can we doctor one of these to show actual blanks in it? And then it occurs to me, me and the other 4 people on the planet would recognize that there are blanks in this thing. I said, just use a normal one. Just get one from University of British Columbia where they were filming, and just have the scientist. And it was originally Ann Simon was the scientist. I'll explain that one in a second. So I said, just have the scientist point to it and say, see, look at the blanks. There are no blanks. Look at the blank. Look at the gaps in the sequence, which don't exist. This shows there's an extra nucleotide base pair. And so that's how that came about. And then Chris asked me the final question, which was, what would you do? If you were, doing research, and this is what you came across, that this organism has an extra base pair, what would you do? In other words, if you were studying something that was clearly alien, what would you do? And I said, well, I'd call the government and tell them. And so, but of course, in that episode, Scully's right there, and she's the government, so the scientists would tell her. And so all of that then ended up in the script. And then he sent me the script, and it had my name. It was Dr. Ann Simon. So I know I'm talking. I hope you don't mind.
This is your show.
Okay, yeah. So seeing my name, I just thought, oh, this is the coolest thing, because I saw Dr. Ann Simon as a reoccurring character. I saw her as, here's the scientist who's going to be helping Mulder and Scully in their quest for the truth, season after season, year after year. Here's Dr. Simon. I was like, it was me. It was help. And then I'm reading the script, and then I get to that scene where they kill her off and her entire family. my visions of Dr. Ann Simon. And then, to make it worse, they're filming it at they have this thing, Georgetown Medical Center, microbiology department. Who do you think, it's not me, is in the Georgetown University Medical Center microbiology department? The other Ann Simon, who's a microbiologist. So they had to change the name. So they kept the Ann, and then they changed the last name to Carpenter, which was my husband, now my ex-husband's last name. So it was Ann Carpenter, but that was me, okay? I was the scientist. So she was prettier and cuter and thinner, a lot thinner, but that was me. So that's how I got involved with the X-Files, and that started it all. And I don't know if people came by today. A lot of people came by. Thank you. I wasn't lonely today. But I had with me I still have it there, my T-shirt. So Chris sent me a T-shirt, the very first X-Files T-shirt. So I have it with me today. It's well worn. I had no idea the show was going to be this popular. I would have kept it in mint condition, but who thought that? In fact, what I thought at the time was, who on earth would put this logo for this television series on a T-shirt? Who would ever buy that? Which is why I'm a scientist, and he's a multi-million-dollar, a producer and marketer and everything else. So, but I have my T-shirt with me today, and then that was the start. And since then, he was calling me and sending me scripts to read, and I was having a great time, and I told absolutely no one I was doing it for 5 years.
So out of curiosity, what was the toughest thing to figure out scientifically?
So the toughest thing to figure out scientifically, there's been a number of them, but it was certainly this season 10. So it was my struggle too. And so what happened was, it was really, I was so excited. Were you excited? Were people excited when they found out it was coming back? I was so excited. What I did is I kept, in the car on the way home from work, I'm thinking about all this cool science, all this stuff, because I was always giving Chris ideas, which he didn't use, except for Postmodern Prometheus. He used that one. Okay, yeah, yes. And I changed some of his ideas. He did that, but to actually come up with something. So I came up with an idea for the genome, to have the genome be really important. And they're sequencing all these genomes, and what if they find something in the genome that shouldn't be there? And so I was thinking about that on the way home. So as soon as I got home, I got on the phone and I called him. I said, I hadn't called him. I hadn't spoken to Chris in years and stuff. But I called him right away. I said, Chris, I hear it's coming back, the X-Files. He said, yeah. I said, I have a really great idea. He said, don't tell me. He said, I'm within like a day of finishing the script for the first episode. He said, I will send it to you as soon as it's done. And read it, and then tell me your idea. So I say, okay. So he sends it to me like 2 days later, and I read it, and I realized that my idea would fit in perfectly. And so then I called him back. I told him my idea. He loved it. And that got into My Struggle 1. And then for My Struggle 2, he asked me something which was on the more difficult side. And that was, come up with a way to kill off everybody. And I said to him, everybody except the chosen few. And he said, yeah, everyone, he used that line too. Everyone except the chosen few. I said, okay. Now, what made that difficult? So it's a question. What makes it difficult to come up with a scenario to kill off everybody? First thing was, that was the third time I'd been asked in the last 3 years. Okay. So I did a show for National Geographic on surviving the end of the world, and there was a virus scenario. I was throughout that thing. I was like the scientist where they keep going back. It's like a docudrama, and they keep going back to the scientists talking. And they were telling me that I was scaring the cameramen so much that the cameras were shaking. I was kidding. So I had to come up with something for that. It was really cool. We did this rabies virus. Well, you have to see it too. Okay, but we came off with something, it killed off everyone. And then for the Discovery Channel, I did another thing where we had the aliens killing off everybody with viruses. Okay, so So I'd already done that. So now you have to think of a third way to kill off everybody. But what you have to understand is you don't want to make it really realistic because you don't want to give anyone ideas. You know, we can come up with stuff. I mean, I can come up with lots of stuff. That would be really bad. But you don't want to give, I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are not sane, and you don't want to ever give them ideas. So it has to be something which sounds real, isn't something that I came up with twice before, and something that hasn't been used before, and it has to be visual. That's a key thing. It has to be visual, and there has to be tension. Okay. So what is that? So I came up with, so I'm thinking, and I was thinking about CRISPR and this new technology called CRISPR-Cas, which allows us to modify genomes, anyone's genome. And it's really easy to use. I mean, you can, you know, there's these CRISPR babies in China. It was not hard to do that. But I thought the whole CRISPR technology hadn't gotten out into the popular culture yet. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we used X-Files to introduce CRISPR, which we're using in science, to, you know, everyone, so that they can understand a little bit more about what we're doing. So I was thinking, okay, how could I use CRISPR? Well, I teach Introduction to Biology. And one of the pathways that I teach my students has to do with this one enzyme, an enzyme called adenosine deaminase. So what is this enzyme? This is the enzyme missing in the boy in the bubble syndrome. And everyone, most everyone knows about the boy in the bubble syndrome. You don't have an immune system. You're born without an immune system. They are missing one enzyme, this enzyme adenosine deaminase. And it occurred to me, what if we give everybody AIDS without the virus? AIDS gets rid of your immune system. Most people who have AIDS die of other things because their immune system is so repressed. What if we get rid of people's immune systems? Then they would be killed by the common cold. Or just the flu virus would kill everyone. I mean, anything, would kill you. Just like if the boy in the bubble came out, you know, in the movie they come out, you know, and oh, I'm free. And you know, oh, the grass, it's so nice. They're dead. So I thought, well, this would be a way to do it. And it could be really visual because as people are losing their immune systems, if they're being vaccinated with live vaccines, a live vaccine means you're given a weakened form of the pathogen, then they would come down with that disease. And since soldiers are given weakened form, you know, a lot of vaccines before they go overseas, we decided to have people come down with anthrax. Oh. Okay? Now, soldiers are not given a live, it's not a live vaccine in the US, but it's a live vaccine in Russia. So I thought, okay, who's going to know? So we were going to give people a live vaccine here, which meant that if they were losing their immune systems, they would come down with anthrax. And the anthrax scars and stuff that you see are really very telling and very visual, and they look really gross. You know, gross, X-Files, gross. I thought it was good. So I told Chris the idea of having CRISPR get activated, that somehow people would have had to have gotten this into their genome, the gene for a protein, this Cas9 protein, and then the gene for this RNA, which sticks to a part of your genome, and the Cas is a scissors, and it cuts there. So you can literally get rid of any gene you want, because you can direct a scissors to cut the DNA at that place. And so then we had to come up, so Chris loved the idea. It took me maybe 6 hours to try to explain CRISPR to him over like 3 or 4 days. And still it was difficult. I mean, it's a hard concept to get across. So the question was, how do you end up getting that? How does this gene end up inside everybody? And so the only way that we could think about that everybody would get it was through a vaccine. But what's the problem with using vaccines as a way to deliver nasty DNA to people? You're scaring people. And you don't want the anti-vaxxers to get even more anti-vaxxed, and you don't want people who are pro-vaccine to start thinking, what else is in that vaccine? So we didn't use the MMR vaccine. You know, we wanted to use something that was old that nobody would get anymore. So we decided on the smallpox vaccine because nobody gets it anymore, but your parents got it. And so what we did is we had another virus along with this other virus. So you're given the smallpox vaccine, and in that smallpox vaccine was this additional virus that infected every single cell, including the egg and sperm cells, the germ cells. And that way it would get passed down to the next generations. So everybody literally on the planet who had, you know, were given smallpox, parents or grandparents were given smallpox vaccines, would all have this. And if it was activated, because it was quiescent, it was not doing anything. But once activated, you would make the protein, you'd make this little RNA, you would target the ADA gene, you'd cut it, and people would lose their immune systems slowly. Because it had to be something that would slow, right? If everyone just dropped dead, you know, not, you know, is that tense? Is that visual? Is Scully gone? Is Mulder gone? You know. And then, of course, you have to protect Scully, and so we had to come up with that. And so, you know, it was a lot of science. So it was difficult. But then my friend Margaret Fearon, who's a famous infectious disease doctor in Canada, was helping me with this. Chris gave us the ultimate reward. He gave us story credit on the episode. And this has to be the very first time that a science advisor has ever been given story writing credit on an episode. And I was just, we were in a very expensive restaurant. Chris had taken us out to dinner, and we both started screaming. I don't think I've ever done that before, but we were both like shrieking. Everyone's looking at us. We're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So that's how, so that answers your question. That was the hardest thing, and now you know why. But it was well worth the effort, and it was the highlight, literally the highlight of my life, which is probably saying I've had a pretty boring life, was being on this. Being on the set of Babylon for the bar scene with all the dancing, with David dancing, and what you guys didn't see, I don't know if it was in the outtakes, if it was on the DVD, but he was literally lifting this dancer up into the air and twirling her around and stuff. I mean, she was brave. I mean, really brave. But it was just a great day filming that. And then in the morning before we went out to the set, Chris is writing this episode, the My Struggle Too. I'm reading over every page as he's doing it, making little, you know, spelling typo kind of corrections to it. And then also getting on to what's wrong about the science that he was writing and stuff. And then every break in the Babylon filming and lunch, well, what's considered lunch, which I think was at 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, you know, rushing back to his trailer and working more on it. So it was just every single day of being on the Babylon set, working on My Struggle Too, while he was directing Babylon and writing at the same time, was literally the highlight of, I mean, that has to be the highlight for any science advisor, was doing something like that and then actually getting credit, because we didn't ask for anything. We never expected anything. He gave me a T-shirt. I was so psyched. I got a T-shirt. And for the movie, when I did the science on the movie, and there was a lot of science went into that, I don't have time to go into that, but he gave me credit in the credits. And I was like, yay, you know, but you know, I was happy to get a T-shirt. So to get writing credit, I was thrilled.
How much of a fine line there is between, like you saying, putting fear in us and us being fearful and thinking, oh my gosh, this could happen to us. And then hearing your process is so unique and so cool. And I really appreciate how passionate you are about this. And I wish you were my teacher. I wish I had teachers like you, because I think I would have found more interest in science. And I just never had that.
Well, I'm sorry you didn't. I actually did this last year when I was awarded the Distinguished Teaching Research Award at the University of Maryland. So
that's awesome. So, unfortunately,
we're done.
I know that went by so. I think you need like another couple
there
hours.
No time for questions.
I know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess the lights out means.
We have to watch the screening. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to tell one thing about this episode, okay, that you're about to see, because Karen is gonna moderate this episode. But I watched this episode like all of you, And I'm looking at this incredible acting in this episode. I was absolutely floored. And when they're showing the brother and sister, I'm thinking, you know, they don't really look alike. Seriously, I was thinking that. And then when as soon as the episode ended, I called Chris up. And I said, that was an incredible episode. Who did you get to play those two parts? I mean, what two people did you get to play those two parts? You know, the brother and the sister. I mean, it was just incredible. And he said to me, that was one person. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I absolutely couldn't believe it. So this was an episode that I will never forget because I've never been more surprised to hear that a single actress was able to portray two people to the point where I thought they didn't even look alike and that they weren't the same. So you're going to have a lot of fun watching that right now. So I'm so thrilled to be here, my first X-File convention, and I'm so glad that you're interested in the science and that you came and listened to me talk a little bit about the science of the X-Files.
Well, your first and definitely not your last convention. So one more time, ladies and gentlemen, for Dr. Ann Simon!